Well, we got one of them mixed bags today. We've got cruisers stranded for a bit after their cruise ship collides with a pier. We also have some exciting news coming out from the port of Galveston and the port of Jacksonville, and then a bizarre story of a man who jumped off a cruise ship and got arrested. Cruise news and my views. Let's talk about it. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Lido, Loca. I'm your host, Tony, here with the latest cruise news and views for your face on February the 7th, 2024. And like I said, I got some weird stories for you today. Story number one, the Carnival Magic yesterday was in Ocho Rios, Jamaica, and they had docked at the pier there, and folks had already got off to start exploring Ocho Rios. The ship had come alongside around 8:10 a.m., but then at 11 a.m., something wild happened. There's high winds going on. This is the big problem. There was a failure of the pier fender. It collapsed. Causing the cruise ship slam into the pier there at Ocho Rios, causing damage to the Carnival Magic, causing damage to the pier, and causing an unsafe situation. And so they were told that they had to skedaddle off of that pier, and they bugged out. They got off of that pier while passengers that they had let off of the cruise ship were out in Ocho Rios, Jamaica. So there was no way for them to come back. Now, fortunately, they set up a team there on shore to help these folks acclimate to the fact that when they showed back up that their cruise ship was gone. And then a scramble started happening to figure out how could they get the Carnival Magic docked again in Ocho Rios and get these people back together. Fortunately, there is a second pier in Ocho Rios. It was being occupied by the Costa Pacifica, but after the Pacifica bugged out later in the day, the Magic was able to come alongside that pier. They were able to get all the passengers from the one pier to the other pier, get them back on the cruise ship. But because of high winds and, the event that had happened that day, they decided to stay docked in Ocho Rios. I believe that's where that ship is when we woke up this morning. So it's going to be interesting to see if that cruise will continue, if there's any further damages to the cruise ship. Maybe it's just a little bump and rub kind of thing, no big deal. But some interesting moments for cruisers on that cruise ship. Could you imagine? You go off on your excursion, you show back up to the pier, and the cruise ship's gone, and you're like, dude, did you set your watch right? Because I know for sure that, and the wild thing is that ship wasn't even supposed to be in Ocho. It was almost like Dante from Clerks, like, I'm not even supposed to be here today. And, that's that cruise life, baby. You never know what's going to happen. And look, Ocho Rios is not the only cruise port dealing with calamity yesterday. We have another cruise port that weather severely impacted there in the Caribbean. I'm going to tell you all about that. But first, let's talk about the sponsor of today's episode. Let's face it, some aspects of getting older, it just plain stinks, right? And, look, we try to be as strong as we can as men, but one thing that tweaks a lot of dudes is when they start to lose their hair. And, as I was growing up, a lot of members of my family, they went bald, and there wasn't a lot of options for them. But we live in an interesting age now where there are FDA-approved hair loss treatments. And when they first came out, you'd have to go somewhere and you'd have to get them, and you have to talk to somebody. And maybe that was even a little embarrassing. Well, excitingly, in this day and age, we have Keeps. Keeps is an online subscription service that delivers FDA-approved hair loss treatments right to your house. Now, since their inception, Keeps has helped nearly 1 million men keep their hair. They've got testimonials that you can view online with both, before and after pictures. They offer both of the FDA-approved treatments, and they have other things like, a thickening pomade. They also have thickening shampoo. There's a lot of options to help men that are struggling with male pattern baldness to either prevent loss of hair or to strengthen hair growth. Clinical studies have shown that the treatments offered by Keeps 90% effective at preventing hair loss and can increase hair growth by up to 35%. Whether your intention is to prevent hair loss or to stimulate hair growth, Keeps has you covered. Keeps is loved and trusted, with most customers seeing a result within the first 6 months. Simply, hair loss stops with Keeps. For a special offer, go to www.keeps.com/La Lido Loca or click the link in the description to get started with Keeps. That's www.keeps.com/La Lido Loca. Big thanks to Keeps for sponsoring today's episode. Okay, like I said, high winds impacting Ocho Rios yesterday. Carnival Magic hitting the pier, but we also had high winds in Cozumel yesterday, causing three cruise ships not to be able to dock. The Norwegian Breakaway, the Regal Princess, and the Carnival Breeze all skipped their port stop at Cozumel yesterday, which, look, that's 3 cruise ships. That's thousands of people that were anticipated to get off cruise ships in Cozumel, to flood those port areas, to go to the beach clubs, to go to all the spots where people were selling their wares, to the bars, to the restaurants. It's a big deal. A lot of times we think of it from a cruiser impact perspective. My cruise got moved and got, itinerary got shifted because of weather. Woe is me. But there's like real communities out there waiting for these cruise ships to come in. A big part of their daily economy, a big part of their, full year economy, and even something as, just missing one day is a big impact. There's still some concern in Cozumel because of the high winds, and going into Wednesday, they're supposed to have, I believe, a total of like 7 cruise ships come through there, along with several incoming flights. All of that may be impacted. Mother Nature, she don't care about that cruise business. She's going to do what she's going to do. But certainly can feel the pain of these communities not getting the opportunity to do their thing. And of course, cruisers bummed out because they're not able to go to Cozumel. Hopefully the weather calms down. It's been a really weird beginning of the year, wet, windy, cold. But yeah, hitting a pier, skipping ports. Like I said, it's that cruise life. Anybody out there impacted on these sailings, leave a comment below. Now, over the last couple years, we've had a lot of conversations about cities that are no longer excited to be considered cruise ports. They don't love that cruise business anymore. We talked about Key West and Charleston, South Carolina. We've talked about Bar Harbor, Maine. We've talked about Rome, the challenges they've had with the lagoon over there. We've talked about some spots in Alaska. Well, there's still some cities out there that are saying, I'll take more of that cruise business. A great story coming out of Galveston, Texas is the Galveston Wharves has approved the agreement with MSC Cruise Line to build a new terminal so that MSC will have a permanent presence in Galveston starting in 2025. The terminal's supposed to be ready. They're going to be sending over the Seascape, and now Galveston will have another cruise line home ported there with new infrastructure, a new terminal. That's exciting. And then we also got word that the council has approved another cruise line to home port in Jacksonville, Florida. Currently, they're just home to Carnival Cruise Lines. Well, starting in 2025, they will also be a home port for Norwegian Cruise Line. They'll be home porting the NCL Gem. It's a significant move. That's going to be the first time that NCL has ever home ported out of Jacksonville. There's really, 5 thriving ports here in Florida, and Jacksonville being kind of the most northern port. So you can just pop down the East Coast and you can easily get to Jacksonville and get on a cruise ship. You got Jacksonville, you've got Port Canaveral, you've got Port Everglades, you've got the Port of Miami, you got the Port of Tampa. That's 5. And then I think we also should count the Port of Palm Beach, where Margaritaville at Sea sails out of. That's 6. And then even if you slide across the Panhandle, there's Mobile, Alabama. So if you are in the Southeast United States, there is a lot of options for cruising. And it's really nice to see some of these smaller areas like Jacksonville getting more options, so that if you're not, a Carnival cruiser, that you have something else that you can do. And I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait till Norwegian goes there. I haven't been to Jacksonville in a while to cruise out out of, but I have cruised out of Jacksonville. I would definitely go on the Norwegian. Jim, what do you think? Are you excited about this move for Jacksonville? Are you excited about the latest updates in Galveston? Is it good for cruisers, all this expansion, or does it concern you a little bit? Because there's probably some reasons for concern. I'd love to hear your comments. Leave a comment below. Now, let's swing back around to yesterday's interesting discussion on the lady who was trying to give her cookies to a crew member who, during that conversation, revealed that one of the fun things she likes to do is to take the $30 tip that she's allocated, three $10 bills, and hide it around the cruise cabin so that the steward, the cabin steward, the cabin attendant can, have a fun little treasure hunt to find their hard-earned tip. A lot of interesting comments on that. First, a lot of people said $30. That seems a little cheap. That's pretty interesting. I think the overall sentiment was don't hide the tips that you're giving to the crew member. That just seems demeaning to make somebody jump through the hoops to get the gratuity that you're leaving. But then there was also this hot take that I thought I would share with you and see what you thought. The person says, couldn't they be hiding the tips to make sure they do a thorough job cleaning? My guess is if the stewards check over the room properly, they would find the tips anyways. I have seen many areas in high-end hotel rooms that do not get checked after each guest, like the picture frames or the baseboards or even things left in drawers. Cleaners are in a hurry and always leave the details for the next guy who leaves it for the next guy, and so on. I've also run into obviously used bed sheets not being changed during turnover. I know the steward housekeepers have a very hard job and are not paid enough, but they need to be taught to have attention to detail. So this commenter is suggesting that really the person that's hiding their tips is doing a service for all of us. They're making the room steward better cleaners because now that they know that if they look in every nook and cranny, like an Easter egg hunt, that they may find some coin. I find this to be a ridiculous premise. Again, if you have trouble with the cleanliness of your room, reach out to a supervisor and get it resolved in a normal way. But I do think it's horribly demeaning to hide money around a room and tell a room steward to find it if you can. Interesting conversation, interesting discussion. Now we got to talk about this wild scenario that played out on an MSC cruise ship over the last few days, where we had a gentleman go overboard, and once he was recovered, he was arrested. One of those stranger than fiction type things. But before we do that, let me quickly invite you to subscribe. If you like staying up to date with everything going on in cruising, please consider subscribing with the notification bell on. That way you don't miss out on any of these episodes. We're marching to 250,000 subscribers. Love for you to be a part of that number. Today is as good a day to subscribe as any, and it doesn't cost anything. YouTube's going to send you a notification when the show comes out, and it helps us out. Thank you in advance. Well, here's the deal. The MSC Bellissima was visiting Noha, Japan on February the 1st, and as the MSC Bellissima came into harbor, a Turkish national jumped off of the cruise ship and swam to shore. Now, it's unknown at this point whether this was a crew member or a passenger, but what is known is that you can't exit a cruise ship and enter a country that way. And so he swam ashore, he got up on the pier, and he started wandering the pier. The cruise line notified the shore side that there was a man overboard, and authorities started paying attention to who was coming onto the shore. They discovered that this was the man that jumped off of the cruise ship, who swam ashore, and he was promptly arrested for illegally entering the country. A wild scenario. Now, I've heard this before. I've talked to crew members before that there are some cities, I don't know if you know this, before the shutdown, there were several stories about where crew members would go to certain cities like New York City, and they would go on their shore leave and they would not come back to the cruise ship. So now there are some port cities that when a cruise ship arrives at, crew members are not allowed to leave the cruise ship out of, a concern or just a protection for borders so that they don't, illegally enter the country. And, interestingly, again, we don't know if this was a crew member, but, the authorities there in Japan are treating this incident like somebody who was trying to illegally, introduce themselves into the country. He's been arrested. It's going to be interesting to see what happens going forward. But yeah, you never know what's going to happen in cruising. All kinds of strange things. And look, jumping off a cruise ship is no small feat. Of course, they're in a protected harbor. Maybe that's a little more safe than doing it out in the middle of the ocean. But yeah, wild stuff. Boom, that is your cruise news. Sure hope you enjoyed the show today. Show your support by hitting the like button. A big thanks to Keeps again for sponsoring today's episode. This is Tony for La Lido Loca. Until the next time, we'll see you on the Lido. Bye. Cruise news.